All right, recording is started and we're going to start right now. Okay, good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's edition. Once again, we are here. It's another weekend of learning, of growing, of knowledge sharing. You're welcome once again to the Nigeria M365 Community. Here is where we get to teach, mentor, and share knowledge on everything you ever want to know concerning Microsoft 365. So I welcome you once again. We are here on this session of the 4 months intensive Microsoft 365 mentorship program organized by the Nigeria M365 Community. In this program, we help you to kickstart your digital skills journey. It's totally free and it's brought to you by the Nigeria M365 Community. We welcome participants from across the globe. In this program, we will be learning the following technologies: the Microsoft 365 Copilot and Copilot Studio, the Microsoft Entra ID, which we have gone through before, the Exchange Online, SharePoint Online, in which we are continuing today, the Microsoft Teams, Microsoft Intune, Microsoft Defender XDR, and Microsoft Purview Compliance. I welcome you once again. Before I proceed, I would like to appreciate the leaders of the community, the organizers, the mentors, and everyone who have come together to make this mentorship program for the year 2026 a success. I appreciate everyone, and I think we all need to appreciate them as well. Please, to do this, please just jam your hands together. Let's give them an applause emoji to appreciate them for coming up with this innovation and for also lending their time, lending their voice, their energy, their resources, even their skills and their experience into making this program a success. Thank you very much, everyone. Right. I would like to proceed by introducing myself. I'm just someone who is passionate about technology, and I love to help individuals to kickstart their digital skills journey. I am committed to empowering people to break into tech with confidence. All right, I help individuals and organizations unlock productivity through Microsoft 365, Microsoft Azure, and generally cloud solutions, right? My expertise is in Microsoft Azure, Microsoft 365, cloud engineering, and I love to turn complex systems into simple, usable solutions. Thank you very much. Once again, this is me. My name is Aishat Oshileye. We will be introducing our mentor for tonight. She will be taking us deeper into SharePoint Online, which we started last weekend with Yomi Alidare, and Nyore will be continuing from where Yomi Alidare stopped. So this is Nyore. I know this a lot of us. This is the first time we are meeting her, but she is a seasoned SharePoint administrator with over 5 years of experience in the IT space. She's a recognized subject matter expert who specializes in managing and optimizing SharePoint environments to enhance collaboration and efficiency. All right, beyond our technical expertise, she is passionate about community development, and she actively mentors aspiring professionals by helping them grow and thrive in the digital workspace. All right, that is Nyore for you, and she has always been coming around. She's an asset to the Nigerian M365 community. She's always been coming around. I think I've seen her being featured on the deep dive last year that focused on Microsoft SharePoint. So she's here today to share with us her skills and knowledge and our expertise. Let us jam our hands together. Let us give her some applause emoji to appreciate her and to welcome her to tonight's session. All right. Sorry, we're not supposed to be here. Before I hand over to her, I would like to share with us a few housekeeping rules that we all are already familiar with. starting with the fact that this session is recorded and recording will be made available for future viewing. Your mics are muted, right? But whenever you have a question, you can raise your hands, and you can also pen down your questions till the Q&A session, or even leave them in the chat area. Follow us on YouTube, on Twitter, that's X, on YouTube, where we share all our contents, on LinkedIn, as well on our LinkedIn page, where you can be updated. You can follow us on LinkedIn so that you can get updates concerning all our community programs and so on and so forth. Yeah, we have a WhatsApp community that's like not able to accommodate us anymore. So we have our Discord server that we want to use to centrally manage and organize everyone now. So if you have not done so, please try to join our Discord server. Yeah, thank you very much. I will be going on into the class. I'll stop sharing my screen right now. I'm going to stop sharing my screen right now. All right. Nyore, all right. I got a message. I'll try to look at what's going on. I really don't understand. Let me try and do that. Let me try and do that. All right. How about now? Try again.
Yes.
So, yes, thank you very much. Welcome to tonight's session. You have the floor now.
Hello, everyone. My name is Nyore, as the moderator has introduced. I understand we started introduction to SharePoint last week. So I'm sure we all know, if someone asks you what SharePoint is, you should be able to give a basic explanation of what you think SharePoint is and how SharePoint looks like, and how to create sites and manage sites to an extent. So today I'm going to basically be talking about sharing in SharePoint and permissions in SharePoint. Sharing is a major aspect of SharePoint. I can say 50% of what you might do in SharePoint would rely on sharing. If you know how to share, if you know everything about sharing and permissions, you would have understood 40% of what SharePoint is about and how to manage SharePoint. So I'll just share my screen for a bit, give a run through, and then we can go into doing some labs. So let me know if you can see my screen. Can we see my screen, please?
Yes, your screen is visible.
All right, thank you. Okay, so we're still doing SharePoint Online Fundamentals. This is me. So we're just going to be talking about SharePoint sharing, and then we'll do labs, and at the end we'll talk about questions that you have. So today, like I said, we're going to be doing more of permissions and sharing, and then tomorrow, if we're able to finish permissions and sharing, we can go into site administration, storage, and management. So we're going to be looking at sharing and permissions, external sharings, external sharing, shareable links, file requests, which is still under sharing today. So basically, SharePoint permissions are controls on how and who can access your SharePoint site. And there are different hierarchies of permissions in SharePoint. So permissions allow you to either view, edit, delete, or manage generally SharePoint content. Permissions apply to users, Microsoft 365 groups, or security groups. You can have permissions on the tenant level, site level, subsites, libraries, folders, particular items in the site. So this is basically talking about features and capabilities of sharing. I'll just read through. SharePoint sharing enables secure collaboration by letting users grant access to sites, libraries, folders, or individual files, both inside and outside your organization. It simplifies permission management through link-based sharing, allowing users to choose, view, edit, and set expiration dates, and restrict access to specific sites. SharePoint supports internal users and external guests, integrates seamlessly with Microsoft 365 apps, and also maintains and controls tenant and site level settings. I skip through that. Overall, SharePoint sharing balances ease of collaboration with security, governance, and compliance. So this is basically what the SharePoint tenant sharing settings look like. We're going to look into this when we go into the labs. So if you go into sharing in the tenant level, you'd see this. It automatically sets to new and existing guests when you create a tenant. If you want your sharing to just be limited to only people in your organization, this icon is movable, so you can scroll it down to allow only people in your organization to be able to access content in your site. Once you scroll this down to only people in your organization, there's no magic that you can do. You would not be able to share to people outside your organization. So we have existing guests, new and existing guests, and anyone can access content in your site. So if we go down to sharing structure, we have full control, design, edit, contribute. Edit and contribute are almost the same. If you see, edit allows you to add, to edit, to delete items and documents. Contribute allows you to add, edit, and delete content as well. Read, you can only read the items in the site or documents. View only allows you to only view. The difference between this and this is that for read, you can download. So there's something we always used to say about read. The D at the end means you can download, right? It's just an inside joke that we use. And then view only allows you to only view. You cannot download when you have view only access. Limited access, automatically granted for access to specific sites. So when you have access to just a file in a SharePoint site, it kind of grants you limited access to the SharePoint site because you have access to only specific items in the site. So these are just permission levels. And if you come this way, these are shareable links. When you are trying to share a file or a folder, you have anyone with the link. If you share using this particular type of link, anybody that has access to that link would be able to access the content that you have shared. People in your organization, this link can work for anybody in your organization. Even if you have not shared it with them specifically, you can access it as long as they're in your organization. Then specific people, if you share using specific people link, only the person that you have shared with or the people you have shared with will be able to have access to that link. So we're basically going to do demos on that. This would also take us through the demo. We would learn how to restrict sharing of SharePoint and OneDrive. We would learn how to change the external sharing settings for users, how shareable link works. We would try to change default links for sites, navigating through the sites, enable file requests in SharePoint, restrict sharing of SharePoint and OneDrive content by domains, allow only members in specific security groups to share. So, like I said, I think we gave a few brief on what full control is. So before we go in here, whenever I am doing training or whenever I'm talking to somebody on SharePoint and trying to explain what permission is, I kind of like to use the analogy of a house to explain sharing, right? So if I say, let's say, for example, we have a house that has a kitchen, has a bathroom, has a toilet, has different rooms, the master's bedroom, visitor's bedroom, and then bedroom for the children. If you give somebody the key to the house, the key to everywhere in the house and say you can go to anywhere in the house, you have given the person full control. So the person has access to everywhere in the house, anywhere the person can go to. You have said, oh, I allow you to enter anywhere in the house and there's no problem. So that's basically how I try to explain full control, and you're able to understand it very well. You can go into the house, you can do anything. I give you permission to remove anybody that you don't want in the house. If anybody is doing anything that you don't like, you can send the person out of the house. Whatever permissions or whatever access I have in the house, that's the same access I've given to you. So this is basically just a structure of the full control. The analogy I just gave about a house. If you give somebody full control on the site collection, they have access to whatever subsite you have created on the site, the libraries, the folder, all of the items, anything in the site, they have access to it. So, okay, this is supposed to be for edit permissions. So if you grant access to a user with edit permission, they have the ability to make changes on the site. They have access to actually everywhere in the house as well, but they are limited to what they can do. If I grant you edit access to a house that I say you can go anywhere, you don't have as much permission as you have for somebody that has full control. You cannot delete somebody, you cannot delete an owner, you cannot delete a member. You can delete, but you are basically restricted to some things that you can do, not has full control. And then somebody that has read permission to the whole site, I say, okay, this is the key to the house. You can only enter into the house and enter into the rooms, but you cannot touch anything. You can only see, you cannot add or remove anything. Unlike somebody that has full control that can add, can remove, can delete, even edit. But if I say just go, you can only look, you cannot add anything or remove anything. So you can see it says edit. You cannot modify items, you cannot upload new files, you cannot delete or move items, you cannot change any site settings or permissions. So this is for external sharing. Before we move into external sharing, I would go into the SharePoint Admin Center, and then we can just look through what I have just explained. And if we have enough time, we can then go back and look extensively into external sharing. So I would go into the admin center, and I'll go into the SharePoint admin center. Is to have a site that I use for training. Checkpoint. Okay, so before we go into the site, let's go back to the settings, sharing settings, and then I will explain bit by bit. So I explained what the sharing settings in Admin Center looks like in one of the slides while we were checking. So this here, if we go back here, so basically these are the sharing settings. OneDrive, like I like to call, is a child of the parents, and the parent is SharePoint. If I make any changes to this, you see that this is automatically moving as well. But I can do just the parent, and then the child is still movable. This does not depend on this, but this depends on this. So if I do this, it goes on its own, and then I can move OneDrive. But if I move SharePoint, OneDrive goes together with it as well. So list permissive. If you want your SharePoint or your tenant to not be able to share anything outside of your organization, you can leave it as only people in your organization, so no external sharing is allowed. I like to explain to people when they ask me what SharePoint is, and I say it's a website, but just for people in your organization. And then so basically it is an intranet, and you can then decide if you want people outside of your organization to be able to access content in your site or not. And SharePoint is very broad. You can decide whatever you want to do with your SharePoint, right? You can decide to say, oh, I want SharePoint for just sharing of news in my organization, or I want it for just storage. So depending on what you want to do with it, that's what SharePoint does for you. So only people in your organization is the least permissive. Once the setting is set to this, you would not be able to share anything outside of your organization. So if you want to say, okay, move it to only existing guests, if you move this to only existing guests, you can only share to guests that are already in your organization. That means you have to create external users, and then you'll be able to grant access to, you'll be able to create guest users, and then you can add them to your SharePoint or share with them. So if you say new and existing guest, you can share with existing guests and new guests. You don't have to go and create guest users before you can share with new guests. You can just share with them, and then they accept the invitation, and they should be able to access whatever content that you have shared with them. So the most permissive one, anyone, when you have the most permissive, it means you have access to share with people using the anyone link, and they don't need to sign in to be able to access those contents that you have shared with anyone link. So basically, these are security and compliance ways to keep items secure in your organization using SharePoint. Right. So I would go into my site now. I'm going to be using this site for the practicals. Let's see. Let me create a new site for this. So just create a new site so that I know I must have spoiled a lot of things on that site. So I'll just create one and let's see. Okay. Great. So the first thing I would do is to show you. So when you go into your SharePoint site, um, when you need to go to your site's permissions, if you click on the settings icon here, you'd see site permissions. We have 3 default groups when sites are created: the site owners, members, and visitors. Like I said earlier, I mentioned full control, edit, and read permissions. So if I go into advanced permission settings, you'd see this is edit, members, owners, and visitors. So the owners, these are the 3 groups that are created by default when you create a SharePoint site. The owners group has the full control by default. Members group has the edit permission by default. And visitors has the read permission by default. So if, for example, you want to share item with a user with full control, you can just go into the owners group and click on add permission, add new, put in the user's name, and it automatically grants the full control. If you don't want to do that, you can come here to say grant permission. You type in the user's name. You type in the user's name, you click here, and you select so you can either grant them, put them into any of the groups, or put the permissions you want to grant them from here. Select, let's say edit, and then share. You can see that this has now been added here, which was not here initially when we created the site. So that is that for sharing. So like I said, full control has full access on all the whole site. And now we know that the default group's owner's permission comes with full control. So we'll go back to the admin center before coming back into the site. Okay. So managing more external sharing settings. Like I said, once we're done with permissions, I will come back here and we can do this. So I'll go back into the site and deal with the permissions. So I explained that to get into permissions, you click on the settings icon, go into the permissions, and then I have explained what the whole permissions are about. So, like we said, when you grant access to a user, full control, the user has access to all of the sites, all of the document libraries, everything concerning the site. So I will go down to explain how to break the permissions for a user with edit permission or read permission. Okay, so this is a default document library. If you go into the document library, you can control permissions for the document library in a way that if you have access to the site, for example, I give you access to a site. I don't want you to have access into the document library. I don't want you to have access. I don't want you to be able to see the document library or see a particular document library. You go into the settings again. That's where you have access to the document library, and you'd see where we have library settings. And you go to more library settings. When you go into more library settings, you would see permission for this document library. So you can see that the permission that we gave on the site is inherited by this document library because we granted edit permission on the whole site, and then the user should be able to go into any of the document libraries and they have access to it. But if I want to prevent this, to say I only want these users to have access to the site, to only see maybe the home page, I don't want them to have access into the document library, I will come here to stop inheriting permission. Just like I explained a bit about OneDrive being the child of SharePoint. These are permission levels, or these are layers of SharePoint where you can limit where users can have access to. All the document libraries in the site, every other thing in the site is inheriting permission from the main site. So to stop that, in a library, whatever library you create, if you don't want everybody that has access to the site to have access to those libraries, you should go into the library permissions and inheriting permission. So we're going to stop inheriting permission on this. And then most of the time I advise when you stop inheriting permission on this, you can remove every user from here, remove users permission, and then you can start building your permission levels from here. So if I go to check permission, So let me just explain what this is. I have stopped inheriting permission. So for some reason, I say, oh, I want everybody that has access to the site to have access to the document library. I can go ahead to say delete unique permissions. And you see it has brought everything back that we had initially removed or deleted. So I would go back and stop inheriting permissions again. And then remove as well. So I have explained what this is and what this is. So let's delete unique permissions again. Stop inheriting permissions. So, like I said, I advise that when you stop inheriting permission, you just delete everything from here. But for some reasons, if you don't want to delete everything from here, even on the site level, you can do this. You can edit a user's permission. So if I click on edit user's permission, I can change it to full control or change it to read and say okay. And you can see it has changed the user's permission to read. So I would just delete it like I have mentioned. And I can decide to remove just one user from here, and I can decide to do all of that. So this is basically just checking, explaining what all of these buttons are and what they do for permission. So I have granted permission to Nyore on the home site. From here, I have stopped inheriting permission. So I want to do a check permission to be sure that Nyore doesn't have permission on this document library. But I would have permission because I'm the owner of the site. I have full control. So you can see that I have access on this. As I created the site. So you cannot chase the landlord away from the house. I'll try to see if I can get a user and share, and then we can try all of those permissions. Let me see if I have. So I'll just go into the site permissions and see if I can share with the user. Let's see. Okay, let me go so that I can explain it better to you. Okay, so I'm going to share with this user. Let me try a different user. Sorry. Let's see. Okay, so I have shared this site with this user, and so let's go into the document library where we have stopped inheriting permission and see. So you can see that the user is not appearing here, and we have granted the user permission on the site. So let's do this. Let me try to then access the sites from here. This is, let's see what user this is accessing. This is it. Okay. Mm. That's an issue I would have to fix later. Just continue. So basically what I'm trying to show, when the user accesses the SharePoint site, they would not be able to have access to the document library. They should not be able to see the document library. Okay, so let me try one last user. Okay, so let's try this again. Same thing. I don't want to do that right now. Okay, so let's keep that for now. Okay. So let's try to create in some folders into this document library. test one. Test two. Okay, so the same goes for when you share a site, and you can stop inheriting permissions for each document library and allow only the user to be able to access the site and specific things. Same goes with a document library. So for example, I have this document library and I want users to be able to access only a specific folder in this document library, right? I can also go ahead to restrict the permissions to just a specific document library. So from here, I can go into manage access and go into advanced settings. You can see that this folder inherits permission from its parent, which is documents. At the moment, there is there's no permission, or there's no user that has permission on the document library because we have cleared all of that. So I can go here to say I want to stop inheriting permission from the parents, which is the document library, and then I can grant permission specifically for this. So let's see. Then we can share. So this permission is just for this folder. If I go back into the document library, go to manage access, advanced settings, you can see that there's no permission on this folder. This is still inheriting permission from documents, which is the parent, right? So the same will go for the third folder and whatever amount of folders that you have created. And you can go forward to say, oh, for this folder I have created, I only want users to have permission to specific files inside of that folder. One. So you can go ahead to do the same. You can see that this user now automatically have access inside of the files I have created, because at the moment it is inheriting permission from the folder, which is this. You can see this document inherits permission from its parents. So permissions are being inherited from the top level down to whatever items that you have created. If we had not stopped inheriting permission from the site, the permission on the site would have gone down to the item level. So whatever permission was on the site level would be what we would see here. But since we have stopped inheriting permission, it breaks the permission from wherever point it is. So we can also stop permission on this level, which is this. So like I said, it's advisable to remove whatever user is there when you stop inheriting permission. So that breaks down the permission level from the site to the document library to folder level and even to document level. So I would explain sharing links and then we can try to go back, and I'll try to create a new user, and let's see when I share what happens. I don't know why it's not letting me access. So this is called the sharing link. Sorry, the sharing icon. So if you have like a folder and you need to share, you click on that, and let me go back in here. I explained. So from here, I mentioned that we had anyone link, people in your organization, and specific people. And I also explained so anyone link, the link will be accessible to anybody, people in your organization, only people in your organization would have access to it. As long as they have access to that link, they can access it if they're in your organization. Specific people, only the people that you have shared with would be able to access the link. Even if you share the link with them, you send it to them via an email, as long as you haven't shared with them, they would not be able to access the link. So that's what that is. So people in Wiki, this is people in your organization. So whatever name your organization is, that's what you see there. This is for the specific, this is for people that have access. This is for people you choose, that is specific people. People with existing access are the people that we have already shared with. If you notice, I cannot see the anyone link here, right? So it means that at this point, I cannot share using anyone with the link. So I need to find out why I cannot share using anyone with the link. From the admin center, you can see that it is, the permission is most permissive. So I should be able to share with anyone with the link. So I will go into the site. So the fact that you have made the sharing policies or the sharing settings in admin center to be able to share with anyone with the link, you can come across some issues like what we're seeing now. I can't find anyone with the link, so I need to know why I'm not able to share using anyone with the link. You can restrict sharing by sites. So let's go back here. So I will go into settings and let's see. So you can see that this is set on new and existing guests. So let's change this to anyone with the link, save it, go back in here, try to refresh. You can see that the anyone with the link now appears. So I will go back here and explain it again in case I was too fast. So when we came here, we could see that the default was here. You could see, let me save it again and go back. When you clicked on this, the default, you can see that it is highlighted. So it means that the site is set to new and existing guests, right? So if, for example, it was set here, let's go back. So like I said, even if the tenant setting is already set to a specific setting, the site can still have different settings. You can still manage sites whereby you can say, oh, I want my organization to be able to share to external users and also to restrict them to sharing just internally. So you can create a specific site to say, oh, this site should not be able to share anything outside of the organization. For example, your HR site in your organization or your finance site, there's no reason why you need to share anything from those sites outside your organization. So you can restrict the settings to only people in your organization. So I would come back here, refresh this, and if I click on this sharing again, if I come here, you can see that it has people you choose and people in this. So people you choose should be able to share to external users. But since we have restricted it to just internal users, let's try to share to an external user and see what happens. So let's say you can see it shows an error to say you can only share within your organization. So that setting has taken effect. Sometimes when you make some changes in SharePoint, they might not reflect immediately. So for example, if I had done this and it hadn't given me this error, I just need to wait. Some changes take about, let's say, from an hour to at most 24 hours. So you can just have to be patient sometimes. So since we changed this setting, you can see that we can no longer share outside of the organization. The send button doesn't even work. So it's of no use. So I can come back here and change it to anyone with the link. And that's when, so let's refresh this and try what we just did again and see what difference it will make. You can see it says this user is outside of your organization, but it isn't stopping us from sharing, right? It's not stopping us from sharing. We can send it to the external user. Okay, so that is that. So for example, for the sharing links, you can, if you're doing the sharing link, you can grant user the permission to be able to edit the file, to be able to view the file. And this one, so I explained when I was explaining read and just view, I explained that when you have read, you can't be able to download. So this feature makes it easy for you if you want to share to a user that they can view but not download. You can click on this. It basically explains what the icons are for you. Can view but not download, right? And then you can share it with a user. So I would like to show us some real practicals on what we have done. So just be patient for a bit. I need to try to create a new user and let's see. Don't know why those are not working. Okay, so next. Okay, so let's see if this works for us. So I'm going to try to grant this user access on the main site so that we can see the behavior that we have. Okay, so this works. So we're going to give edit and then we share. Okay, so let me try to use the private window here. Okay, so that lets us sign in. So let's try to copy the URL of the site that we're working with. And let's see. So we know that we have granted permission on the site. We have stopped the inheritance on the document library and one of the folders. So let's see what happens. So you see, we're able to access the site, right? And if you go into the main site, you see that the document library appears here. But for this user cannot even know that there is a document library because we have stopped inheriting permission on the document library. So the user is not even aware that there's a document library in the site, right? I can only see the site page. I can see every other thing, but I cannot see the document library. I cannot see the folders in the document library. I cannot even see the file in the document library. So you can, in one site, do a lot in one site. You can prevent users from accessing things in a document library while they're accessing the site, right? So let's go back into the site and try to share a folder, right, with this user, and then let's see. So let's do this. Let's try to share. Let's what's the folder that has files in it? This folder. Okay, this one has files in it, and I think we had stopped inheriting permission from one. So let's share. Let's go and share this one with the user, right? So we know that the user has edit permission in the site. So let's give it read permission on this folder, and let's see what happens. So let's try to refresh this page. You can see that the document now appears, but only one folder is here because we have shared only one folder in the document library with this user. They can only access one folder. And then they can access the two files in the folder. So let's go back here and see. Let's try to stop inheriting permission on one of the files and see what happens. So you can see that it is inheriting permission from the parent. So I want to stop inheriting permission from the parent and see what will happen. So I have stopped inheriting permission from the parent. So you can see that the file has disappeared, right? So you can basically control permissions on a site for different users. So some organization or maybe an organization you're working with, you can say, oh, I'm trying to create I'm trying to create a SharePoint site for IT, right? And then I don't want to create different sites. Let's say this site is named IT. And then I want to create different document libraries for IT instead of creating different sites, right? I can come here to say, oh, let me create one site for project management. So if I uncheck this box, it won't stay here, but if I leave it there, it will stay there. So that's what showing navigation means. So you can see it is here. So I can go ahead to create another document library for product managers. And create another one for software developers. So instead of creating different sites, multiple sites, I can create one site and create different document libraries. And then what I just have to do, I go into project management, I go into library settings, right? I go to more library settings. I stop inheriting permission, go to permission for this document library. I stop inheriting permission and say, okay. And then I delete all of the users from here and grant permission to only people that are supposed to have permission to project management. In that case, anybody that goes into this site have only access to what they should have access to. They don't know that there's any other thing on this site because they do not have access to it. That's basically how you manage permissions and manage the granular permissions in site level, um, folder level, and file level. So even in project management, where you have granted permissions to people in project management, if there are different projects in project management and different project managers in different projects, and you don't want each manager to see what is in the other folder, you can go ahead to also, stop inheriting permissions, and then they can only see the projects that they have access to. So I hope that explains what I was trying to explain to us. Okay, so I'm going to do a test, right? I granted the user edit permission. So let me come here again and show you what is that. So you can see that all of the sites, all of the document libraries we just created, the two document libraries we just created, this user can see it because I hope we know why the user can see it, because these two libraries are still inheriting permission from the parent. So let's go and stop inheriting those permissions and see. We stopped inheriting permission for project managers. You can see that it is no longer here, but we didn't stop inheriting permission for product manager and software developers. So let's stop inheriting permission for both and see what happens. Okay, so just go in there. permission for this document library. Okay, we have stopped inheriting permission for project managers. So product managers, let's do the same. So we'll stop inheriting permissions, okay? And then remove users' permissions. I'll do the same for software developers. Okay, so let's go back into the site. Here, not that one, this one. So you can see that just refreshing it, because we have stopped inheriting permission, all of it is gone. I can no longer have access to them because I do not have permissions to any of this, right? So I want to grant this user full control, and then let's see what happens. So I will go back into the home page. User has edit permission at the moment. Site permissions, advanced permission settings. So you can see that I have edit permissions. For some reasons, if the permission was not here and it was in here, and you have a lot of users, instead of you going in one by one, you can just click on check permissions here. That was not the user that we shared with. This was the user that we shared with, sorry, Adams Taiwo. So that's what I'm going to check with. Adams Taiwo. If I click on check permissions, click on check now, you can see that Adams has permission in the members group. Like I explained earlier, members group by default has edit permissions, right? And then I need to remove Adams from members and add him into owners. So I'm going to add him into owners, and let's see what changes that makes. Okay. So he's in owners. I'm going to take him away from members. Remove users from groups. Okay. So let's go back here. Okay, so just for us to be sure, I'm going to close this and try to log in again. Okay, so that's not it. Sorry. Try to get the user. Okay, so I'm going to copy the site URL again. So let's do this. So if I go into membership, if I go to owners, if I go to site admin, let's do this for Adams. Still not. Okay, so add Adams as a site admin. And if I go back here, so see that everything has come back here. So like I said, permissions and the permission levels and hierarchy are different. So when someone is a site admin, they have access to everything in the site. Even if you have stopped inheriting permission, you have removed permission level, it's just like the owner of the house. You have given this person co-rights, just like you as the site admin or as the tenant admin or the SharePoint admin. Whatever you can do, if you grant someone access to a site admin as a site admin role, they can do anything on the site. They can delete, they can create, they can do anything. So even if you have stopped inheriting permissions, they are able to get access to everything and anything in the site. So that's that. Let's go forward. We've talked about all of this. So I'll touch briefly on external sharing, and let's see how that goes. I think we've covered majorly what permissions should be and understanding of permissions. So back to the admin center. Okay, so I explained how you can, limit sharing on a particular site if you, even though the settings here is set to most permissive or least permissive. And I also mentioned that OneDrive depends on SharePoint and not the other way around. But so we know that OneDrive is a personal site, right? So we have OneDrive here, and with the settings that we have here, this user should be able to share content with anyone with the link. But you can also restrict a particular user in your organization to say, oh, I don't want this user to be able to share with external users because they might create some items and then share outside the organization, which I don't want them to do. So just use my own user to do the test. So when you want to manage a OneDrive sharing settings for a user, you find it in, when you go to active users, you click on the username, you go to OneDrive, and then you should be able to manage external sharing. You can see it here under sharing, manage external sharing. So at the moment, it lets me share with people outside of my organization. I can share using the anyone link. But if I want to say, only allow sharing with guest users in the directory, I can uncheck this and say, I don't want this user to be able to share with anyone outside of the organization. If I uncheck this, this user would not be able to share with anyone outside of the organization. And only you as the admin has the right to do this. So they cannot share with users outside of the organization. So if, for example, you come along a situation where everyone in the organization, they're able to share from OneDrive to external users, and only a particular user is having that issue, or only a particular site is unable to share to external users, you should be able to know where the issue is coming from and check all of these settings and see, you can be able to tell where the issue is coming from. So that is that. So apart from this settings here that prevents us from sharing with external user, there's something that is usually missed when users are sharing, when you're trying to share with an external user. You have checked everything and you've checked everything to no avail. You have checked that all of the settings are set correctly, but you're still not able to share with external user. There's a site collection feature that also blocks external sharing. So I clicked on site information, site settings, and I'm going into site collection features. There's a feature called limited access lockdown mode. So I'm just going to look for it. Limited access permission lockdown mode. So I'm going to activate this. And I'm going to show you, can see that it is now activated. I'm going to show you the effect of what that feature would cause. So you see, I haven't even done any sharing yet. It's already giving me a notification. So let me try to share with an external user. See if it shares. Okay, it did. That feature should, I said some of the features take a while to take effect, right? But that feature prevents users from sharing with an external user. So let me see, maybe because the user already has, let's see. Okay, so I've just tried to share with a user I haven't shared with before. It says the organization policies don't allow you to share with these users. Go to external sharing in Office 365 Admin Center to enable it. This is directing you to Office 365 Admin Center. But believe me, if you go to Office 365 Admin Center, you check everything is correct. There's no problem here. And you have also checked the site. We know that the site setting is correct. So what is the problem? The only thing that will cause that issue is this feature that we have just enabled, right? So I'm going to deactivate it. and then let's see. Refresh this again. I'll try to share again. Can see that that notification is not there at the moment. And where was the user that we were trying to share with? Let's see. So you can see it doesn't show me that error again, and then I can share with the user. So I would love to go into more external sharing. I'll just give a I'll just run through these settings, and then I can let you ask questions, and then we can continue from there tomorrow. So I've explained what sharing is, how to share, where you can share, how you can limit sharing. And then for external sharing, you can also limit external sharing further. Because if we have enabled external sharing, we should be able to limit what people we can share with, or who do we want to share with, and also limit people that I want them to be able to share, and allow guests to share items that they own and all of that. So that's just a brief breakdown of what that is. So lastly, I would want to show you what this tool means. It says choose the type of link that's selected by default when users share files and folders. Choose permissions that are selected by default for sharing links. So these two are basically pointing us to this sharing link. When I click on this, by default, you see that it is pointing me to people you choose. And you can see that the default here is scan view. So if I go here and say people you choose are specific people. So if I go here to change this to only people in your organization as the default link, and I go here to choose edit as the default and I save, those settings are going to change. At the moment, you can see this is what is here by default and this is what is here by default. So I'm going to refresh this page and share. You can see that it has automatically changed to people in your organization, and this is can edit by default. So I'm just going to change them back so I don't forget. But yes, if you come across this scenario and you need to change the settings, this is where to do that. So I've changed this back to can edit and can view because I want to restrict access as best as I can for my users or for my sharing. So that is that. So I would let us ask questions now. And yes, thank you very much.
All right. Everyone, let's just appreciate Nyore, right? Let's give loads of applauses. Thank you very much, Nyore. This is it has been a really insightful session, and you all agree with me that everyone has learned a lot from this session. Thank you very much. It's been impactful. Yes. This is the Q&A section. All right. So if you have any question, just signify by raising your hand, and then I will be able to enable your mic for you to ask a question. So while we are waiting for people to signify, I will check the chat area for the questions. All right. We don't have much question, but somebody's asking if you can share the presentation with them. That's the PowerPoint with them after the session. That's one question coming from Mercy. And then somebody made a comment and said there is a block signing action on the first user. And another person said, does this permission apply to lists as well? All right, those are the questions, but the technical one here is the one from Yadi that says, does this permission, I think that was when you were handling the permission area, part on a particular user, right? It's asking if the permission apply to lists as well.
Okay, thank you. Yes, so the permission applies to document libraries and lists and whatever contents that you have on the site. So it's not just to document library. In a list, let's say, for example, let me just try to create a list. It's the same it's the same structure of permission that a list has that a document library has as well. So when we're in the document library, we could go to library settings. So this is list setting. So you can go into permission for this list as well. And when we go there, you can see that the list is inheriting permission from the parent. So you can as well stop inheriting the permission from the parent, and then just like we did, you can go ahead to remove the user's permission. And yes, so applies to library, applies to list, applies to documents and items and whatever you have in the site. So yes.
All right, thank you. I'm not seeing any hands raised. I don't know if there's still anyone who has one or two questions to ask. And I think that should be all for the questions, if there's no other questions coming up. So although I have one feedback from Boloranduro Steven, who says he enjoyed every bit of it. So I just thought I should read that out to you. Thank you very much, Nyore. This is a positive feedback for you on the session. Thank you. Thank you for coming. Really appreciate you. Yes, thanks a lot.
Sorry. So before we conclude, since there's no question, I don't know if we have all created sites and we have a session for tomorrow. So just for me to be sure that we have understood basics of permission, I would want to give us an assignment. So I'm going to drop my test tenant email on this chat. I want you to share a site with me, giving me full control on the site. And I'm going to break something on the site and let me know if you're able to fix it by tomorrow. So give me admin access on the site. Whoever can do it. So I'm expecting a lot on the call. I'm expecting no less than 10 people to do that for me. So yes.
Okay. Thank you very much. And also, please, I would like you to just drop your LinkedIn profile link.
Okay.
Yes, if you can drop it in the chat, fine. If you can't, you can just drop it on WhatsApp for me. Then
Okay,
I'll add it to the other links that I have. All right, guys, I'm going to be sharing the LinkedIn profile links of all the mentors and organizers for this mentorship program in the Microsoft 365 community. So please do well to connect and follow them on LinkedIn.
I think someone asked a question on the chat, Femi.
Okay, said, do we have access to SharePoint on the lab break? Of course you do. You have access to SharePoint. Yes, since you all have licenses, you have access to SharePoint. And I will check if you have access to, of course, you have access to the admin center as well. Everyone on the labs are admin role enabled for SharePoint as well. So I don't think that you have any problems as regards the labs.
Okay, so I answered the two questions. So Femi, you're asking that there was a rule I activated. You didn't know how I got there. So I'll just go back there again. So from the home site, I went into site information and view all site settings. So I went to under site settings, you go to site collection features, which is under site collection administration. And the feature is called limited access lockdown mode. These site collection features are in alphabetical order. So we're looking for limited access permission lockdown mode. And this was what I activated that prevented me from sharing externally and deactivated. So yes. The last question, what's the assignment is if you have created a site, grant me a full control access on the site, or site collection admin access on the site. And I'm going to break something on the site, break a permission on the site. And you need to try to share that site to an external user and see if they can access the site. And that's my email address, my test email address, so you can share it to that. And then we can pick up from there tomorrow, whoever is able to do that. Thank you.
All right, I hope you got the question now. Right, Yadi, right? All right, that's fine. Okay, this is 9:43 p.m. and I believe it's safe and okay for us all to call it a night. It's been a wonderful one. Thank you very much, everyone, for showing up, for participating, for being attentive, and for engaging as well. We appreciate your coming, and till we meet again tomorrow, same time, same place. I want you all to have a wonderful evening and a very restful weekend. Thank you very much.